I went to bed and fell asleep as usual. However, my good rest turned into a bizarre nightmare that night. I suddenly found myself in a horror movie scene. Seriously, I was threatened. The next thing I knew, I was fully awake. The bedroom was really dark. The curtains were closed, but some dim light sneaked in from the streetlights, making strange shapes on the walls. Outside, a bright full moon made it not so dark. I could hear late-night buses and cars passing by, which added to the spooky feeling. With my eyes open, I saw a black male silhouette right next to my bed. In the corner of my eye, I saw my wife sleeping tightly next to me. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I tried to wake my wife up, and I suddenly realized I can't move. I was unable to move my arms to give her a nudge. The only body parts I could move were my eyes. Nothing else. I was paralyzed. I was frozen down. I felt like I was tied to my bed. I was fully aware of my surroundings. I knew exactly where I was. I was so vulnerable at this point, and nobody could help me. The silhouette came closer and closer to me. I saw every step of him towards me. As he was approaching me, I had nothing else in mind but what would happen and how would I survive. I couldn't move, and fear filled my mind. I thought about my wife sleeping next to me, unaware of what was happening. My heart raced, and I wanted to wake her up, but I couldn't. My fear kept growing as the pitch-black figure got closer. I felt trapped, like I was in a scary dream that I couldn't escape from. It was really frightening, and I just wanted it to stop. I asked him, "Why are you here, and what do you want from me?" He said, "I am here to harm you. This is why I was sent here." I kind of thought that, and from that moment, there was nothing to stop him. Then he started to punch me in the face. I felt a terrible pain, both physically and emotionally. The pain in my face and in my heart at the same time. I was devastated and helpless. This continuous harm took a few minutes. Then all of a sudden, I felt my body lighter, and I was finally able to move my arms. My first reaction was to punch him back. So I did. I was punching and punching with my fist in the air like an idiot. Then the silhouette suddenly disappeared. My only luck was, the bed was in the middle of the room, well away from the walls. Can you imagine if I punched the wall several times as hard as I possibly can? From the next day onwards, I just kept the whole experience for myself, as I didn't even want to talk about it. It had hit me so hard. I only hoped it wouldn't happen again. Then I decided to tell my wife all about it, but even weeks after the sleep paralysis episode, my voice and my whole body were trembling while I was telling her what happened. As a teenager, I was not always comfortable watching or listening to horror movies. The after effects would linger. But just as most cousin reunions demand, we too got under the sheets to share spooky stories. Scary times for me, to be honest. Moreover, I remember telling myself that I was not wired to get through such an experience. The first was the worst of all, because I had no idea what in the effing universe was happening. I was in bed in my hostel dorm, and just as I was about to fall asleep, I felt as if I was being sucked in. While something pulled me towards the bottom, I also felt a huge weight on top of me. I tried calling out for my friend whose bed was next to mine. I couldn't. Meanwhile, my eyes were wide open, and I could see the back of the blanket on my face. I didn't want to live life guessing who it was trying to crush me that night, so I desperately tried to remove the blanket to find out. I failed. I was completely jammed. After the ordeal ended, I burst into tears and told my friend about my supposed paranormal encounter, which is what I reckoned it was at the time. I was severely damaged for days as I couldn't Google it or read relatable stories. Fellow boarding school folks would sympathize. College was demanding. During one stage, my anxiety levels peaked and the sleep cycle was in the dumps due to impending assignments. That's when an unprecedented horror befell me. What fresh hell is this? I thought to myself. I had a sleep paralysis attack, which I could have gotten through until an indescribable figure decided to make an appearance. There were large, translucent drops, the color of water, suspended all around my room, and eventually coming together to form a distorted silhouette. They don't show such a thing in the movies. It didn't have a face, arms, a body like ours. To my own shock, I was not as scared as I should have been. It was disturbingly real, given the entire setup of the room during the sleep paralysis episode was recreated and not a dust particle had moved. But again, it was probably the awareness of what was happening and knowing more about it that got me through that night. It's also quite bizarre that I didn't have to struggle to wake up to make it all end. Maybe because I was never asleep. I was wide awake before and after. So I am in my early 20s, and I used to have mild hallucinations when waking up without the use of an alarm while being unable to move. This was years ago, and it never really bothered me, but it happened this morning, which was kind of my fault. So I hung a jacket from the hood of a closet door on the way in front of me the night before, and when I woke, I saw a woman standing there with the jacket on and her back turned. Somehow I assumed someone I knew was laying in bed beside me. I don't know who. So I was trying to yell to the person beside me. Then slowly the woman turns so I can see her from the side, and it was my cousin, who died last year and was just starting at the mirror on the door. At this point, I am losing it, but I can't seem to yell out. Then, all of a sudden, I regain movement and end up yelling, "You see her right? Right? WTF is happening?" I turn, and there is just a blanket laying beside me. And when I look back, I easily make out just the jacket hanging on my closet door. I'm still freaked out. I suffered a terrible accident involving being kicked in the face by a horse, which resulted in my jaw being broken. 2 plates and a wired jaw later. I was pretty hangry and exhausted. I'd suffered from sleep paralysis before, but nothing to the extent after this accident. It occurred every night, sometimes multiple times, for months on end. We have a mirrored wardrobe next to our bed, my side of course, and I keep the bedroom door open. Quite often I would be just falling off to sleep when I would feel the dread wash over me, followed by the feeling of someone being in the room. I would then feel like something was pulling me off of the bed by arm, towards the mirror. Then the nightmares progressed to being dragged off the bed by my back, all whilst feeling choked, unable to scream or move, unable to get my husband's attention, who lay next to me. Extremely unnerving and upsetting, to the point I would fear sleep. My husband told me that I'd been sleepwalking, and I had no recollection of this. He'd found me in the hallway a few times. Really upsetting. After a post on Reddit, it was suggested that we cover the mirror. It did help curb the amount of experiences for a while until I returned to work, etc., where the nightmares lessened. Recently, the sleep paralysis has returned, but interestingly, so have my daily headaches and migraines. I am able to sometimes let out a sound trying to scream, which my husband then is able to wake me out of it. My most recent experience has been of a black figure like a person covered head to toe in skin, tight black lycra who is trying to drag me from the bed by face. Incredibly frightening. In this state, it feels like it is almost in slow motion, and I'm trying to crawl my fingers across the bed to my husband to wake him, but it is impossible. I find it interesting that most of us who experience this tell of the same figure